Well, hello and welcome. Yes, I've had a few days off. I'm doing really good. I'm just waiting for our guest to arrive. I did send through a link. Hello, Poppy Seeds. I'm just waiting for our guest. When our guest arrives, we will start. I'm just killing time. I'm expecting to get an SMS message in a minute to say, I'm not sure how to get this to work, but that's okay. So I trust that you are all well. Hello, Plan to Create. So this is how it's going to work tonight. So I do have slow mode on. So I'm going to essentially hand over most of it to our guest, and I'll try and pick up all the questions where I can for you. I was going to talk about the achievement of Dylan Alcott with the Australian Open, and I thought, why not get somebody in that has actually commentated on him and knows a little bit more about Dylan Alcott, because I don't know whether you know, but he just has got what's called a Golden Slam, and he has won everything, including an Olympic gold medal. He's won every Grand Slam. He's a wheelchair athlete, so an amazing guy. So, how's everyone been doing? Anybody good to see me? Yes, I got my assignment in, which was good, which was really good. I've got one more to hand in this weekend and I'm done. Aha! Talk about. All right. So I've written.
Hello.
Hello. So you're now live, Dan. How are you?
I'm well, Joanne. I'm well. Yourself?
Good. I'm good. So everyone, this is Dan. I've written a blurb in the description, very short blurb about you, Dan, for everyone to read.
Good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, that depends where I got it from. Depends whether I got it from Wikipedia or not.
Fair enough. And I do apologise for my appearance. I've haven't had a chance to cut my hair, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Joanne. So looking forward to being part of it for a while.
Cool. All right. All right. So just so that everybody knows, if you've got a question for Dan, if you can write a question, put a Q on it so I can pick up the question. I've got it on a 45-second mode so I can write it out. What's a goal? So first question from Poppy Seeds, what's a Golden Slam? Because Dylan Alcott's just got a Golden Slam.
Well, the Golden Slam is winning the 4 in the 1 year, which is the Australian Open. He's won the Australian Open wheelchair tennis title for the 7th time in a row, but he's won it this year. He's won Wimbledon. He's won the French Open. He's won the US Open. And he's also won, which obviously is only every 4 years. And obviously the next Olympic Games will be 3 years from now because of COVID. He's also won the Olympic gold medal. So that's a rarity. I'm not sure too many other tennis players will do that, but he's done it. If you win the calendar slam, and no one's done it since Rod Laver after Djokovic got beaten, it is the 4 main titles again, the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon and US Open. It just indicates how hard they are to win.
Yeah.
Thanks, Poppy, for your question.
Okay. So with the women's final was on so that was unusual because they weren't top-seeded players, were they?
They were both unseeded. Raducanu from Great Britain, and it's a great story for them because they do love their tennis and they'll get right behind her now and the media will drive her mad for a while. I'm hoping she can handle the media. She seems to, by the way she performed at the US Open and the way she fronted the media, Joanne and everyone, she was pretty good. We'll wait and see how it all goes if she continues to have success, because it's a sport that the Brits have not had a lot of success in. When Andy Murray burst on the scene, I know he had his issues with everyone wanting a piece of him. And now Raducanu is seen as the next big thing. But we often see it in women's tennis that they might have a fleeting moment, and hopefully it doesn't happen to her. But she came from nowhere. She won all the qualifying matches. She was ranked well outside the top 100 in the world, in fact, 150. And then she's won every single match. So 7 matches, first round, second round, third round, fourth round, quarters, semis, and the final without dropping a set. And to win 7 matches is a great effort, whether you're seeded or not. But to have to come from qualification is magnificent. And to do it as a teenager and to do it without dropping a set in a Grand Slam tennis tournament like that just indicates that she is one cool customer. And hopefully it's not a one-hit wonder for her, but she was sensational. So well done to her, and also well done to Leylah Fernandez. She beat some wonderful players on the way through. Osaka, Angelique Kerber, who's won a number of Grand Slam singles titles. Alina Svitolina, some would say probably the best not to win a Grand Slam title or to make a final. And then, of course, she also beat Sabalenka, who probably lost the match herself by playing too many unforced errors, but Fernandez kept getting the ball back into play. Fortunately, maybe one match too many for her, but she's indicated that she might be on the way up as well. And Canadian tennis have a few up-and-coming players in both the men's and women's side, and that's a good sign for her. Coached by her father, who's a soccer player. That does worry me a little bit with the helicopter parent syndrome, but we'll see what happens as time goes on with her.
Okay, great. Right, I haven't said. So the other thing is that we said Djokovic lost as well. So that was a big thing because everyone had thought that he would actually win that.
Well, exactly right. Look, he was warm favourite, wasn't he? But this is a pretty good player, Medvedev. Second Grand Slam final, first Grand Slam win. He's been number 2 for a while. He's been ultra consistent. He's been doing everything right. Look, I'm not sure what happened. Djokovic got beaten in straight sets. He's been up a long time. It's that 21st Grand Slam hurdle maybe. Something that Nadal hasn't been able to do to get past Federer. Djokovic hasn't got past him yet. We think we've seen the last of Roger Federer. Serena Williams hasn't been able to get past Steffi Graf either. She keeps stumbling, and I don't think she'll get there. So maybe, and this is probably a big call, I would have thought, could they all be stuck on 20 Grand Slams? I don't think so, because I think Nadal will win the French again. I'm not sure he's got the body to win any of the other 3. What I mean by that is his body is just about cooked, but he prepares himself well for the French because he knows no one else can get near him, being a clay court superstar and specialist. And we know Djokovic loves the Australian Open. So I think they'll get past Roger, but I will still say, and in this sports media industry, Joanne and everyone, it is an opinion-based industry. So we've all got an opinion on it, but I still believe that even if Djokovic and Nadal, and I'm sure they will go past Federer's total of 20 Grand Slam titles, that he is still the best I've ever seen. What a magnificent player he's been over the years. Even though Djokovic is a superstar and Nadal, every single match he plays, it's like a war zone, the way he plays, and he just goes to war. But that's why his body is just starting to pack up a little bit. But well done, Medvedev. He might win a few more from here, but just an ultra-consistent player who peaked at the right time and a bit too good for Novak on the day.
Yes. All right. So Totally Clueless wanted to know, is there a sport that you hate covering because it's boring?
Oh, look, if I had a choice, motor racing's one I'm not madly in love with. But then again, I say no to any sport. Being a sports broadcaster, you've got to be able to, and they ask you to do a sport, you do a sport and you do your homework. But you make sure that in a sport like motor racing that you get your experts around you as well, the ones that know the sport back to front, that understand a car back to front. If I had a choice, I probably wouldn't choose motor racing. But I see every sport as a challenge. But at the end of the day, that's what we do for a living. I haven't had a chance to do a Grand Prix in Australia. I probably won't get that chance now, but I find the sport at times, I know that there are those out there that love the crash bang aspect of it, that it's not one of my more favourite sports, but I admire those that do it. I admire those that are involved in it. But at the end of the day, if I got a chance to do it, I'd certainly try and take that opportunity with both hands. But if I had a choice not to do it, I probably wouldn't do it, with the greatest respect to all those that like it.
So which sport has given you the hardest time for your coverage? What sport or team has given you the hardest time for your coverage? Says D.
What do you mean by hardest time?
Hardest time. I think, just thinking where D.
In regard to access to interviews, in regard to not providing you with the information that you require.
Fans.
Oh, look, I've never had much of an issue with fans. I mean, you get the fans on social media now because, as I said earlier, Joanne, it is an opinion-based industry. So you're going to have a view on everything, and you are. And I've been very strong on the Geelong Football Club in the AFL. For those that are on our chat tonight, and depending where you are in the rest of the world, if you're outside Australia, I've been a bit harsh on them, and I've been a bit harsh on Port Adelaide, and I'm often harsh on Dave Warner, the Australian Test cricketer. You do get the fans being a bit harsh on you, but at the end of the day, if you put your head on the chopping block, you are going to get it cut off. So, look, most clubs are okay. Some of the community clubs that I've dealt with in recent times are a little bit nervous about dealing with you because they don't quite know what you want. But once you tell them that this is what you're looking for, you're just looking to do the best coverage you possibly can. You've got to remember that in community sporting clubs, unlike elite sporting clubs, they're not paid roles. They're all volunteers. So they've got jobs, they've got families, they've got to do all this extra work, multitasking with the general things that they do in life, such as looking after their families and having a full-time job. So you're asking them for team names, you're asking them for information, and that can be a bit difficult. But at the end of the day, I think if you are nice and polite and explain what you're looking for, they will do their best to help you. With elite sporting teams, it can also be difficult too because they're protecting their image, and they see the media at times as not looking after them. The media have a role to play, and at the end of the day, the role is to provide a story, is to provide talking points. And there are so many people involved in the media, whether it be social media, whether it be electronic media, whether it be the written media. They're all looking for story. They're all looking for an angle. 1,600 journalists at least cover the AFL, whether it be social media, electronic or print media. That's a lot of people across the AFL, the Australian Football League in Australia. So they're all looking for stories. So they're going to protect, the clubs are, and the media departments are going to protect their players and protect their image and protect their product. So you have a lot of people that will try and make it hard for you. You just have to stay true to your core and true to your being and get your job done.
Okay, so I've got another question from Rufus. How do you pronounce the unique names for your coverage? How
hard is it? Oh, look, that's a great question. It's very hard. With tennis, you sometimes get a little audio file sent to you, and the players will actually, it's part of their duties as being a member, as being a tennis player or playing in the tournament, to help the media out, to make sure they get the names right, because there are so many Eastern Europeans or so many European names, Spanish names, etc., names that are not anglicised. If you try and anglicise them, that's great, but they will do their best to give you the correct pronunciation, and you have to make sure that you get it right, or you have an agreement with your co-commentator that if you're still having an issue and can't get hold of the correct name, whether it be a footballer, a cricketer, a tennis player, golfer, etc., that you're at least being consistent with how you pronounce the name. But it would be annoying, no doubt, for those players if your name isn't pronounced properly. So, look, you have to work on it. If you see them often enough and you hear them playing often enough, you get to understand it. With a lot of those Russian names, we tend to anglicise them, like Sharapova and Katerina Makarova, those sort of names. They roll off the tongue much easier, but there are some names that can be very difficult to pronounce. It's just a matter of practicing.
Okay. The questions are rolling in fast here. So have you had an opinion that was super unpopular that you copped
Many times, Jane. Many times. I've been a bit lucky in that, I suppose, because I work in the media, they haven't been as personal with me as they might be on forums. If you go onto the forums of the football clubs in particular, and they're massive at the moment, especially the Port Adelaide Geelong teams after they lost in the preliminary finals on the weekend. I even went on the Penrith Panthers forum today, and they're devastated after they lost in the NRL. I've got another chance this week against Parramatta. It won't be easy, but they've been one of the top two teams, and they get pretty angry at their club. They get annoyed at their club, and then people start having a crack and almost getting personal. But generally, I've been reasonably lucky. I mean, people say to me, "Oh, you hate Geelong," or "You hate Dave Warner down there. Do you hate Dave Warner?" That's about as far as it gets for me, because at the end of the day, I suppose there's a respect because I've worked in the industry a long time. So I've never had anyone swear at me, but there are those forums out there where I think people take it way too seriously in sport. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not brain surgery. We all love it. It is an escapism, I would have thought. I've been lucky enough to be, Joanne and everyone, a sports broadcaster for a long time, and my way of earning a living has been what most people get to do in their spare time, in their social time, in their enjoyment time, and that is go and watch live sport. I've been very lucky to do that and make comments on it. And it really shouldn't be taken as seriously as it is. But there are people out there that aren't happy when the criticism comes, especially from journalists or broadcasters like me who've never played the game at a higher level. They're okay, I think, with those that have played the game at a higher level or that have moved into the commentary box. But those that haven't, we cop it a lot more. But again, to answer your question in a long-winded way, I can't remember anyone really getting stuck into me in an overly aggressive manner where it's gone a bit too far.
Yeah, right. This one was from Will. Is there any sport or event you wish you could cover?
That I haven't covered. Yeah, I haven't called Test cricket, Will. I would love to call Test cricket. I've done a lot of one-day matches. I've been part of the commentary team in Test cricket as a boundary rider or the interviewer before and after the day's play and before and after the Test match, but never had a chance of calling Test cricket. I think it's the best and most purest form of cricket you could possibly have. I've been lucky enough to call a lot of T20 cricket, one-day cricket. It's good fun. It's excellent. You're still trying to do your job to the best of your ability. But Test cricket is what you want to do. You want to be able to just sit there and be absorbed in a great contest, especially when it's tough for batting out there and the ball's beating the bat a lot, and you've got 20 minutes of absorbing cricket where you don't know what's going to happen from 1 minute to the next, as we've seen in the recent series over in England. Between India and England, and hopefully we see if they come out here, COVID allowing, for the upcoming Ashes series, which is always one of the big series when it comes to cricket. So I haven't had a chance of doing Test cricket. Would love to have done Olympic swimming, even Olympic athletics, but I have done a lot of other Olympic sports, having been to 3 Olympic Games. But certainly, if I had a choice, Test cricket's one I would love to have done, and haven't had that opportunity yet.
All right. So this is a question from Totally Clueless. It says, do you ever cover or mention a sports person's personal life?
Yeah, you can. And look, I don't like the name Totally Clueless, but nice to hear from you, Totally Clueless. Are you totally clueless about sport? I'm sure you're not, but thanks for the question. Yeah, you do, and you do, provided you don't go too far. I mean, look, there's a lot of information out there. Those people that are in the public eye, they know they're in the public eye, and they'll often have information released about them, whether they may have had a mental health issue or they may have had an injury when they were younger, or a little bit about their family. I know Dwayne Russell, who calls the football for Fox Sports here in Australia. For those again outside Australia, former Geelong player, he's very good at getting information on players and their background, about what they did, and then throwing it in when it's required or when it's needed or when it's relevant. And I think it's good that you do go to the human side of an individual, but provided, again, you don't go too far. I mean, you don't probably bring up too many controversial issues, but if there's been an issue about their mental health, because it's unfortunately such a big issue in society nowadays, I think you can mention that. But you try and be as positive as you possibly can, especially when you're talking about how they develop their skill, whether it be as a cricketer, whether it be as a golfer, a tennis player, footballer, soccer player, whatever. And I think they're great stories because I think they resonate with the public. They obviously resonate, especially with the younger audience who may see themselves replicating their heroes down the track. And if they can get something out of what a Ronaldo did when he was learning how to play football and become the great player he's become, or someone like a Steve Smith, the Australian Test cricketer, or I'll try and get Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, how they played and what they might have done wrong as a kid. Federer was not great on the court. Became ice cool, of course. He used to get very angry when he lost matches, which I couldn't imagine him doing. But if young people can learn from that sort of information, I think that will help down the track in regard to them getting better at what they do.
Okay, so Rufus has asked the question. Without naming names, have you ever come career-ending information that you've had to suppress?
I can't remember, Rufus, off the top of my head. It's a very good question. There's always some controversial issues out there. I mean, we see in a sport like AFL, which is so big here in Australia, especially in the southern states, and I'm sure those that might be with us from America would understand that NFL is massive, the Major Baseball League would be massive, the NBA would be massive. Look, I suppose there's the issue here in this country at the moment is that AFL, especially in the male competition, don't seem to be able to come forward with information about players that might be gay. I'm sure there are players that are gay, and so what if they are? I mean, it shouldn't be a big issue, but there are some journalists that would see it as a big issue. I know there were a couple when I played, and there were a couple who'd retired who worked with us when I was a commentator, that a couple of journalists wanted to get the big story on it. And they were going to make more of it than they should have. I noticed that players are coming out more and more in America, which is fantastic. A lot of the female sports women in this country that play at an elite sporting level, they're gay, and they've all come out, and we don't bat an eyelid. We need to come to that particular phase of our life, especially for a sport like AFL and for all other major male elite sports, that if you are gay, so what? It's not going to affect the way you play out on the pitch or the way you play out on the field or out in the park, etc. And I think that's an area that we are still suppressing a bit in this country. In Australia, I'm looking at in regard to AFL and probably with many other elite sports that the males play. Although I did notice there was an NFL player that came out the other day. There's a commentator in this country, a good friend of mine. I can mention his name, Corbin Middlemass, who works for the ABC. He came out as gay last year. And again, that would be unusual in a male-dominated industry, although the women are certainly getting more opportunities in this country in regard to broadcasting sport. But Corbin came out last year, and, I mean, that hasn't batted an eyelid. Someone did an interview with him. I'm not sure that the interview needed to be done. But, look, he's comfortable in his own skin, so good luck to him. It shouldn't become a big issue. But that, if there's anything, that's the one at this stage where you've had to suppress some information. And I hope that we don't have to suppress the information any longer, but it's up to the player, and we're suppressing it because the player or players are uncomfortable, and they shouldn't be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Right, next question. Para and Penrith this week. What's your take on it?
Oh, well, I think Parramatta are dangerous because of the fact that they've beaten Melbourne twice. Melbourne have only lost 3 games for the season. Going to be very hard to beat. They're straight through to a prelim, but the winner of this will play Melbourne in a prelim. Penrith have blown it. They've been up all year, like they were last year, and they won 18 in a row and then lost the granny because they gave Melbourne too much of a start. Almost got them. They stormed home in the end. So they'd be disappointed losing to South Sydney. He's just a great coach, Wayne Bennett, the way he got that team up to win that game. Oh, look, you think Penrith can beat them, but Parramatta might have the confidence. They weren't great against Newcastle, who struggled against the top sides all year. But I just think that Penrith have been too good for too long. and should be able to find a way to win. But having said that, Parramatta might look at it as a huge opportunity for them to move into a grand final if they can bring their best football and know that Melbourne Storm are waiting. I know they've got to get past Penrith first, but they know that they've beaten Storm twice this year, and that might give them confidence. But I still think that Penrith have done too much right this year and finished well ahead of Parramatta. I know that doesn't guarantee anything, that they should be too good. If they don't win a final and they go out in straight sets, it would be seen as a wasted year for a club that have the best juniors in the league and have finally got all those good players coming through. And if they were to blow it, I dare say it'll take a long time for them to come back from that.
Okay. So what has been the most challenging sport to commentate, thinking of rules or gameplay aspects that are hard to remember?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for the question. I've done 3 Olympic Games. Wrestling was very hard. We had freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling, very complicated. I suppose the one advantage of the wrestling is that it can be a very quick match, as they call it. They can last very quickly. They can last 10 seconds. If you can pin someone down and get the 1, 2, 3, it can be all over very, very quickly. So you mightn't have a chance to have to broadcast it much. Slalom canoeing, of which Jessica Fox won a gold medal this year. I called her winning a silver in her first Olympic Games as an 18-year-old in London, which is still my favourite sporting event and the best moment of my sporting career, being part of the London Games and being over there. That was a complicated sport because you had to be thinking on your feet, keeping a close eye on the screen, that if they touched any of the poles or any of the gates, whether they be red or green, knowing that red was worth 2 penalty points, green was worth 5. You had to keep a close eye on the water streaming, so that they were trying to avoid and hitting the gates. And then you also had to keep an eye on who had gone ahead of Jessica Fox or who was still to come in regard to the timing. And there were some important rules you had to learn with that. Sailing's another one. I don't think you could. I didn't have to. I called the sailing gold medals, but didn't have to worry too much about knowing all the rules or knowing all the gear or all the terminology. It was more. I called Tom Salisbury winning his gold medal, and I was lucky that it was a match race because he had already basically won the gold medal. He just had to ensure that the Cypriot, who was second at the time going into the last race, they had 10 individual races. They tend to for all the sailing classes, and you get 1 point for every race you win. The lower you finish, the more points you gather. So he knew that he could gather a lot of points, provided he had the Cypriot with him, and they could finish last and second last. So the rest of the field were well in front of them in the last race, and they couldn't influence the gold or silver medal. But the Cypriot could win the gold off Tom Salisbury, and it was just a matter of calling them who was ahead of the other. I didn't worry too much about what they were actually doing in the boat. I did it on my own because it's a very complicated sport to learn sailing. I think that's one sport where you have to basically do it to be able to understand it. So those Olympic sports that you do once every 4 years, they're so good, love doing them, but yeah, they require a lot of work because you just don't see much of them in between the Olympics or the Paralympics.
Okay. Poppy seeds. The questions are, do you have any tips for getting quickly up to speed with a new sport?
Oh, you just do a lot of work, Poppy seeds. You just we're lucky nowadays, a bit different to when I started back in. I'm 52. I'm an old man, as you can see. Got a good head for radio. I started back in 1989, and we didn't have the internet in those days. So it was a lot. You had to get books. It was a lot. I'd still love my books. Still read them all the time, trying to get information. But, I mean, you've got the internet nowadays, so you can get a lot of info from the internet in getting up to speed. But as I said earlier, I think if you get an opportunity to play them, I worked with a colleague in London, Shannon Byrne, from ABC Sport, and she was told by one of our other colleagues in Sydney, David Morrow, for her to get up to speed, why don't you go and play these sports? And she was quite athletic and had played a lot of sports, so she went and tried water polo. She went and tried beach volleyball. She went and tried volleyball. All those sports that she didn't know a great deal about. And look, what she did was she acted as an expert commentator for myself as the describer and other commentators, the extra voice. And she was quite good at being able to provide the expert commentary because she played the sport. So if you played the sport, you're going to get up to speed quickly. But also if you have a good look at them or you're ringing high performance managers, which I've done. I've played water polo a couple of times. No good at it because you've got to be able to tread water, not well, but expertly. But look, I've got a bit of an idea about how the sport is played. So I think if you play it, And if you do lots of research, all about doing lots of research and get on the internet, I think that'll help you get up to speed as quickly as you possibly can.
Okay. Well, there's another one here. I always thought a broadcaster stuck to one sport. How can one keep up with all the plays?
Oh, well, it's all changed. You just do your homework. It's about practice. If you're referring to one plays, I mean, in regard to a fast-moving sport like AFL football or rugby league, even rugby union, football, soccer, even though there might be a lot of scoring, it's still quite fast-moving. Tennis on the radio, not so much on the television. You need to have a clear mind too. Your mind needs to be clear. I mean, obviously you have your information in your mind, which I tend to, or written down on a sheet of paper in front of you. But you need to have your mind clear, so you're able to make sure you know what is happening in front of you, whether you're doing it off a TV screen, as many more are doing it nowadays due to COVID, or you're lucky enough to be at the venue watching it in front of you, which I've been lucky to over many, many years in this industry, travelled right around Australia and around the world. But if you have a clear mind and you don't have it too cluttered with information or with other thoughts, you're going to be able to do the play-by-plays. Obviously, doing new sports, that takes a bit more time. If you have good experts with you, that certainly helps. But if you've done a sport like AFL football, I've done a lot of that, and cricket, it becomes second nature. And tennis, after a while, cricket again's different, slower sport. One ball break. That's where your experts come in. You tell a few stories. If it's a slow piece of play, if it's a great piece of play that you're on where the ball's swinging around a lot or there's a lot of runs being made, the play and the action speaks for itself. So, it's all about making sure that your mind is clear and that you're getting your message across and you're concentrating really hard to ensure that you're doing the best job you possibly can, and being able to tell your listeners and your viewers, especially your listeners, because they can't see what's going on, what actually is going on, and painting the right picture for them.
Okay. I missed one earlier. Sorry, Will. Would you ever cover American football?
Great question, Will. I'd need to do a hell of a lot of work. A colleague of mine, Gerard Waitley, does it on SEN in Australia, does the Super Bowl. I think it's a very, very hard sport because there's always a break after every piece of play. And it's a perfect sport for television. That's why they pay massive amounts of money, and that's why the advertisers, especially for the Super Bowl, pay huge amounts of money. It's almost like bragging rights, isn't it, for companies in America, even in these tough times of COVID and around the world, to get an opportunity to be on the Super Bowl and get an ad or a couple of ads during a Super Bowl coverage. But it is one of those sports where you need to do a lot of work. Again, I think it's a sport you need to play to understand all the different positions that are on the field, all the different plays that occur. If I was to do it and someone said to me, we want you to call the Super Bowl, I know in these tough times you don't get that opportunity, but in an ideal world, Will, I would love around 8 to 9 months so I could get to watch as many matches as I could, ring as many people as I could that have played it or know the sport back to front, sit with them and do a bit of practice. And that would be the only way that I reckon I'd have any chance of calling it. And the fact that Gerard has done it, I don't know how much homework he's done. I'm sure he's done a fair bit of homework. He's done a pretty good job, I reckon, in being able to get the message across to a lot of people in this country. And I think the beauty of that is, again, nothing against him. A lot of people in this country wouldn't know the sport that well. So he is preaching to the unconverted in a lot of ways. There are some that would know the sport back to front that might be critical, but you shouldn't be critical because it is a very hard sport to do. But it's a fascinating sport. It fascinates me. But again, it would be one that I wouldn't do justice unless I'd been given a lot of opportunity to prepare for it.
Okay, so Poppy's got another question. Have you ever commentated a match where an injury occurred, and how do you manage that tactfully?
Oh, I've done lots of matches. It's a very good question. Very good question. Oh, look, you just you're trying not to be too dramatic. You are obviously very mindful of the family. I mean, I didn't call this match. I don't think anyone did, but it was the Philip Hughes incident in cricket here in Australia back in 2014 where he got hit in the head. And, of course, it was ended up being a fatal brain injury. It was just in the wrong part of the head. It was just one of those tragic accidents in sport. That was pretty tough. I remember listening in 1975 when the Footscray footballer, one of the big recruits from South Australia, Neil Saxey, stumbled and a Fitzroy footballer unintentionally fell into him, and he ended up being a quadriplegic from that incident. And I remember listening to it a few times, and I don't think the commentator said he seems to be in a very bad way. Now, they weren't to know how serious it was, and I thought they handled that pretty well. So, look, at the end of the day, you are very mindful. Nowadays, with concussion such a big issue in sport, you just hope that they're okay. If they fall awkwardly, you hope, obviously, they're okay, that they have movement. And when you hear that they have movement in their arms and legs, there's a great feeling of relief for both the player and for the family. So I think you be as tactful as you possibly can be. I mean, for those that have followed a lot of sport, we tend to muck around in a sport like cricket when a player is hit in the box because it's protecting, obviously, the old fella, as we say in this country. And look, I think we laugh about that. We probably laugh a little bit too much, but that's a bloke's joke. But at the end of the day, that's still a very painful injury, no doubt. And at the end of the day, you just hope that the player is all right because they're going out there doing their best. And you see a lot of knee injuries as well, and then you might see the replay and think, oh, how bad's that? But I think we tend to handle the injuries pretty well.
Okay. Fox wanted to know, who do you admire
as a broadcaster? I've got a few Fox in this country. Tim Lane, great ABC commentator originally, now at 3AW. Excellent athletics commentator. He called on the radio the Kathy Freeman race. Australia's the winner. Kathy's the winner. She's got some work to do. It was a magnificent call. I was part of the ABC team in 2000. I listened to that. Every time I listen to it now, I've still got goosebumps. Bruce McAvaney, his call was magnificent of that race. Wonderful athletics caller still, did a good job calling off the TV of the recent Olympic Games in Tokyo. Good football caller. The rhetorical questions used to get to me a bit, but he's a hero of mine. A guy called Graham Smokey Dawson when I was growing up, listening on the radio back in the 70s and 80s. Anthony Hudson's a great caller. Love listening to him. I think he's certainly one of the best going around. Martin Tyler, the British soccer commentator, is a brilliant caller. Simon Hill, formerly from England, now based in Australia, is a wonderful soccer commentator. So they're just some that come into my mind as great callers. And I admire what they've done. And if I can be half as good as they've been, and maybe I've been half as good, maybe less than that, I'd have to say I've had a pretty satisfactory career. I'm certainly nowhere near in their ballpark. They're among the best in this industry. And there was a young guy who's no longer with us, Clinton Grivis, who died tragically of a brain injury back in 2008. He was only 33 at the time. He was, I think, going to be the best this country had ever seen, and unfortunately passed away. But he was just a superstar at such a young age. Called the water polo when the Australian women's team first came into the Olympics in 2000, and it was a sport he didn't know a great deal about. Not many of us knew a great deal about, and they won with that goal. Yvette Higgins, with about 1.5 seconds left in the match. And it was one of the great calls. I mean, I've still got goosebumps when I listen to that. So if you're getting goosebumps when you're hearing calls like that, 15, 20, 25 years after the event, you know that those particular people have had a great impact on calling sport. And they're the ones that stick out for me.
Okay, we've got another Rufus again. Do you think the increased money on offer for professional sports stars has been detrimental to sport in general? Is there too much of a celebrity culture taken away from the games themselves? We're hitting the tough ones.
Yeah, that's an outstanding question. I really appreciate the question. Look, I think there's no doubt about that. I still think that they work pretty hard for their money. I mean, I look at a sport like soccer, and they play it virtually 12 months of the year. It's incredible. I mean, when you've got the European Championships, you've got World Cups, you've got then the qualification process every other year, the odd years for those European Championships for those teams in Europe, and obviously the World Cups for all the countries that want to try and get into the World Cup. So they don't have much of a break. And you've got a very long season in the Premier League and most of the other major leagues in Europe, 38 matches in the Premier League. So they get very little time off, and they've got other leagues they play in, especially if they play with the top teams. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of money on offer. Some of the money's obscene, that it might be $45,000 a day and maybe $1 million a week, money that most of us wouldn't see in 10 years, 12 years if we're lucky. But I reckon when I said you've got a sport like soccer, I reckon they certainly earn it. I'm not sure in AFL that they much. I think at times, especially this generation, are maybe not as hardened as they should be. The money that 18, 19-year-olds are earning, $85,000, is a lot of money. Most of people of their age or generation are at uni and just trying to survive by going to uni and maybe having a part-time job to ensure they get through and paying for their uni fees, etc. But if you're earning $85,000, $90,000 as an AFL footballer, that's good money. And you hope that they use that money properly and that they're getting the most out of themselves. Most of them realise that the money is great and they're doing the best they can. The celebrity culture, well, I don't think there's a lot we can do about that. I think we just love our sport and we love our celebrities. Many of them don't nowadays, I think, cope with that. I think that, but they have to learn to cope with it because of the fact that there is so much social media nowadays. Wherever someone goes out, and many of them really can't go out, unfortunately, and have a quiet drink because someone will see them and take a photo on their phone. I mean, you've got so many different contraptions and apps, etc., on your phone nowadays that you can do anything you like and then post it on Twitter, post it on social media, which I think is an invasion of privacy. So a lot of them don't cope with the celebrity status that well, but I think they have to realise that they need to, and they also need to be seen. And some, again, can't cope being role models, that they need to be seen to be role models, especially among many of our younger population who love their sport and watch as much sport as they possibly can, and themselves would love to, as I touched on earlier, make it in the big time if they're good enough down the track. And they need to be taught the right way. But many of our elite sports people, especially those of a younger age, what generation is it nowadays, Joanne? Is it Y? Is it Z? Is it
I don't know.
C, D, E, F? I'm not sure what it is, but whatever the generation is nowadays, I don't think that they cope with it that well like those sports people used to 5-10 years ago.
I was going to say entitled.
What's that?
Entitled generation.
Well, there's a bit of that. Yeah. For want of a better expression, there's a.
Yeah.
They expect it all to be done for them a bit. I know that the sports people, men and women, work as hard as they possibly can, especially the women. And we need to give a shout out to the women. I mean, recently the netballers have got an increase, and they thoroughly deserve that increase of, on average, from 75,000, which isn't bad money, to 91,000, which is quite good money. It's still not brilliant money. Many of them will keep working, so if they're working and earning 91,000 as being among the better players in the netball competition here in Australia, they're going to be going okay financially, but they still work very hard. And we see a lot of the cricketers now almost professional, especially in New South Wales. And we have a very, very good Australian cricket team in this country going beautifully. And we have a lot of talented female cricketers. And now that we're going to have an AFLW 18-team competition, I think it's a bit early for that yet, to be honest. I don't think the girls or the women are as good as they need to be to fill 18 teams and to be competitive. But they're certainly starting to earn some money as well. And you look at the American soccer team. There's some Hope Solo was a goalkeeper for many, many years, and she was one of the biggest American sports stars outside the great swimmers, the great runners, etc. But for a long time, she would have been one of the leading sports stars in America because the women's US football team was a superstar team. So we're certainly coming a long way. And I think they are role models. There's no doubt about that. And in regard to a media's perspective, they're wonderful to speak to, Joanne, and everyone online tonight, because of the fact that there's a lot of life experience, probably more than elite sportsmen, because often elite sportsmen come straight out of school and they really haven't had an opportunity to experience life. The women, they've had an opportunity to experience life, and you'll get a decent interview with them. Many of the men have been taught by the media departments what to say, when to say it, how to say it. At least with the women, the conversations are a lot more diverse and open.
Right. Okay. So we've got In the UK, they have the footy chants. How do you deal with them while you're live?
Oh, I think it's fantastic when you're on doing the cricket and you hear the Barmy Army. I think it's brilliant. I mean, the footy chants are a footy chants. You don't really hear many at the AFL, which I've done a lot of. A little bit at the soccer gets you annoyed, especially when they throw flares. I mean, Melbourne Victory. I've caught a lot of Melbourne Victory matches in the A-League competition in Australia in soccer, and they get a bit wild. They're obviously very passionate. Some of the Sydney FC supporters, the Western Sydney supporters, are pretty strong too. Look, that doesn't really worry me. You just hope that the crowd behaves themselves. I know in soccer it's had a reputation where they haven't behaved themselves as much as they should have, and they need to get better. I think they have got better, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect the commentator because we're lucky in that not only are we paid to go and broadcast matches, we're in safe surrounds, safe confines. We're in commentary boxes, in media centres with big glass fronts in front of us, if you know what I mean. So that's protecting us. We're pretty safe. But I just hope that the spectators do behave themselves, and most of them do. It's a lot better than it was when I was growing up.
Okay, so he's actually in the US, so he wants to know your thoughts on cricket versus baseball.
Yeah, look, I like the baseball. It's another complicated sport. I called it once, and I probably need to say that I made an absolute meal of it. I called it a match, not a game. Getting your head around the different positions out on the field, such as first base, second base, and the left outfielder and the right outfielder, and the line drive. And look, I think it's a great sport. Basically different, I think, in a lot of ways, except, of course, you've got someone pitching, someone batting, facing a ball. They miss it, it's either a strike or a ball, or they get bat on ball and are either out at first base or they're caught out in the outfield, or they manage to clear the pickets or clear the fence and get a home run. Same with cricket. You either might be out, you might leave it. There is probably less opportunity to go out in cricket than there is in baseball because you have the 3 strikes and then you're out. If you miss in cricket, you can miss as many times as you like and not go out. But yeah, there's a bit of a similarity there. Again, it's a sport, and I had 2 weeks training on it and didn't really go as well as I would have liked. It's a sport I didn't grow up with. I quite like it. I played it a couple of times. But it's one of my regrets that I did one game, an all-star match out at the Altona Baseball Club here in Melbourne, and probably didn't do it the justice that I would have liked to have done. But look, it is a great sport and terrific to watch and learn, but I would like to know a bit more about it before I did it next time.
Okay, the Fox wants to know what you think of the 12th man.
Are we talking the 12th man in regard to the
comedian, I think? Yeah, I think so.
Billy Birmingham. Oh, look, I think he's a very clever man. I think he's fantastic. I know that Richie Benno probably takes himself a bit too seriously, but the others thought it was fantastic, the way he used to take off Tony Gregg and Bill Lawry and Max Walker and the whole commentary team. It was great for the Channel 9 commentary team because I don't think they were ever as funny as that other than Bill Lawry. But look, he's a very clever man. As he said, it got his kids through school, private school, so good luck to him. I think there are too many comedians in this country who are not funny. I think Billy Birmingham, actually, in regard to turning it into sport, which is one of our favourite pastimes for a large portion of the population in this country, I thought was very clever and very funny. So full credit to him.
Okay, Follies, has anyone tried to bribe you during the game?
Nope.
Nope.
I've never been into. We're not allowed to bet on sports. A couple of our commentators have lost their accreditation by doing that. I'm not really into it. I might have a very, very small bet on the Melbourne Cup. I've almost got to get someone to help me out to put the bet on. That's how little I bet. Nah, not interested at all. And I mean, what can we do as a commentator? We can't bribe a game. How can we possibly bribe a game when we're calling? We have no control. It's a good question though. We have no control over how a match is played, and that's how you want it. You want to go there with a clear mind, as I said earlier, hoping for a great game of footy. If your own team's playing, you've just got to put that out of your mind. That's not one of my strong points. But you just call a game the way you see it in any sport you're doing, and hope it's an absolute corker, because if you're enjoying it, I'm sure the audience at home are enjoying it as well. That's the key.
Okay, so Rufus wants to know, when you're about to call a big event, what do you do to prepare? Do you do vocal exercises, meditation, last-minute study, listen to music?
I do last-minute study. I try not get there too early, because I think that I've had a reputation of playing the game in my head too much. Or if I do get there early, like at the Olympic Games, you just got there early because you got the first bus available. You just, particularly early days when you weren't sure where you were going, you just wanted to make sure you got there, and you'd go and have a coffee and you'd calm yourself down. And there was a period there near my last year or so at the ABC where I wasn't really connecting with the commentary box that well. So what I would do is I'd go and get something to eat, or I'd go for a walk. I'd go over the numbers in my head again. If it was football, if it was cricket, I'd sit down, just check my notes, make sure my notes were right. If it was tennis, the same. You'd go away and you get something to eat. You could at tennis, because you might work one match, you might have the next match off, and then you're back to the next match. So you have a chance to go and get something to eat. So you get away from the whole atmosphere. Not really into meditation, to be honest. I love my music, my soft rock music, Fleetwood Mac, REO Speedwagon, all that stuff. But I would tend to listen to that when I'm switching off at night, more so than when I'm preparing for a football match. I like to, or a sporting event. I like to go for a run. That's handy, and I'll go over my numbers if it's a football match in my head. If it's another event, just make sure I know what I'm doing, and that makes me feel relaxed and ready to rock and roll, and helps me with my mental health as well. So there are a lot of things I did wrong, which didn't help me, by hanging around too much and getting involved in station politics or office politics and talking too much. I think if you get away and then come in, or you let them know you're there, go away, come back, I think that's your best preparation. Just make sure that you behave yourself properly, you're friendly to everyone, you're nice and calm, and then you can do the best job that you possibly can do.
Okay. So we've got, in America, the longest family generation is 4. The petty in NASCAR, is there anything like that in Australian sport?
Well, the Gays is a second generation basketball. The Kennedys in football, in AFL football, we had John Kennedy Sr., who was a legend at the Hawthorn Football Club, played in the 50s and coached them to 3 premierships in 61, 71, 76. His son, John Kennedy Jr., was a 4-time premiership player in the VFL, AFL with Hawthorn in 83, 86, 88 and 89. And then his son, Josh, John Kennedy Sr.'s grandson, played a few games at Hawthorn, but then wasn't getting a game, and it was seen as one of the big stories at the time that a Kennedy not playing at Hawthorn went across to the Swans and has become an absolute superstar. So, that's one example. Another example would be just thinking of AFL football, the Affliates. There's certainly not 4 generations. There's 2 generations there with Gary Ablett Sr. as one of the greats to play the game, and Gary Ablett Jr., another great to play the game. But 4 generations, that's fantastic. There's a couple of generations in motor racing, the Johnsons, the Harveys, a few like that. Horse racing's another one. The Highlands have been around a long time. The Waterhouses are now probably into a 3rd or 4th generation. Tommy Smith, and then there is Gay Waterhouse, married to the bookmaker Robbie Waterhouse, and then their son is also a bookmaker, and their daughter's also heavily involved in horse racing as well. So that's 3rd generation. But off the top of my head, I'm sure I could probably find someone. We know what motor racing's like. When it's in your blood, it stays in your blood. I can't think of a 4th generation, but that's a mighty effort. Nice,
because I think the Johnson family, I think Dick's grandson's just starting in go-karts. Yeah, so I think we've just got. I think that's the 3rd generation there, isn't it?
We're certainly getting there, and you'll find that there'll be a lot because they're around it every single day of the week. That they will continue to do that. And horse racing's another one where you can do it till you're a reasonable age. I mean, there were certainly 3 generation Cummings as well: Bart Cummings, Anthony Cummings, and then James Cummings. They're heavily involved in horse racing as well, and I'm sure that there'll be more following down the track, because once it's in your blood, it's very hard to get it out of your blood.
Okay, so this one's about, have you seen the Netflix doco on Marty Fish, Untold Breaking Point? Any thoughts on his story?
I haven't seen the Netflix doco. I did read an article about it, the tennis player the other day, and he's supporting Naomi Osaka, and he just found it a bit hard with the mental health. Look, being a mental health sufferer myself, I couldn't imagine what they go through. I couldn't imagine what Naomi Osaka's going through. I hope she comes back, because even though money's not everything, she was the biggest earner outside prize money of endorsements for someone so young. Everyone was jumping on her because she was seen as a very marketable commodity. I'm not sure. You've got to get your health right, understand that. But no, I haven't seen the documentary. I've read the article. It was obviously pretty tough for him, but he seems to have come out the other end. Look, at the end of the day, you've got to get. I'm better when I'm actually working with my mental health, especially broadcasting. All the other things outside do suffer a bit, but if I'm broadcasting, it's a bit like my form of meditation or mindfulness or whatever. But I couldn't imagine what it would be like being an elite sports person, and particularly someone like Marty Fish, who was around the top 50, inside the top 50 a bit. Good player, not a great player, and he's upsets against some of the best players at times, but it was an indication that he wasn't quite at their level. And you can just imagine he's trying to make a living out of the sport. And if you're not one of the superstars in a sport like tennis or golf, where it's basically yourself, it's not a team sport, it's going to be a tough life, because you've got to try and find enough money to make a living. In an ideal world, when we don't have COVID, you're living out of a suitcase. You're in hotel rooms. You're travelling the world. You've got plane tickets to book, etc. You need a little bit of support staff. So I'm sure that having read that article, which was just a thumb sketch of what the Netflix doco was, it was pretty tough for him. And I can understand what he's been through. And he was one that has had a lot of sympathy and empathy for Naomi Osaka, and I have too. But if she wants to come back, she's going to have to do the media interviews. And the unfortunate thing is that when she does come back, first major media interview she's going to do is, how is your health? Why don't you like doing media interviews? And that, again, is not going to help her, unless, of course, she has had. And at the end of the day, mental health, it doesn't go away. You're able to obviously make sure that it doesn't become a major issue. You take medication and things along those lines, and you receive support, ongoing support. But she has to find a way that when she does come back, and I hope she does, because she's such a talented player and she could dominate the sport, because it's very even at the moment without her. But she's going to have to put up with the press conferences. That's what it's all about. I mean, the media is such a big part of sport nowadays. And unless she learns the press conferences and learns to handle them, I know she's very shy, she's not going to be able to play at the level that she needs to play at, and she'll continue in the sport.
All right. Cooper wants to know, what's your favourite Fleetwood Mac song?
I've got a few, but I think Don't Stop, just ahead of Go Your Own Way. Great song, Don't Stop, but I love Go Your Own Way with the and even The Chain, all from the Rumours album, which is, I think, a masterpiece of an album by a band who at the time, for those that are unaware, all hated each other. John McVeigh, the bass guitarist, and Christine McVeigh, the keyboard player, and sang a lot of the songs. Their marriage was just breaking up. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, two of the front people of the band, their relationship was breaking up. They're all hating each other, trying to do this album somewhere in Pasadena in California. And Big Mick Fleetwood was having issues with drugs, the drummer and the guy that founded the band back in the blues days of the 60s. And he was the one trying to keep it all together. And they wrote this masterpiece of an album. And all the songs were about the relationships and the breaking up and not getting on. And so Go Your Own Way, don't get on to probably give one the nod. But they are one of the great bands.
Okay.
Gold Dust Woman from Chaotic Neutral, Dan, is another very good one too, Joanne. Very good song.
Cool. All right. So we'll just go grab these last few questions and then we'll call it a night, because I was going to keep this short. So if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently in your career?
I think that I would. Yeah, look, that's a fantastic question. I think I would like to feel that I had a bit more support emotionally. to help me, that I was able to understand rejection better, because it's a rejection affirmation industry, Joanne, that you're either rejected or or people praise you. And I'm poor with the rejection. I'm not great either. I probably unintentionally, and I get very angry at myself, get ahead of myself. So I would love to have had techniques to help me with that. I probably would have loved to have learned horse racing. Then again, I think horse racing is a sport you need to do as a sole sport, although Matt Hill is proving with his calling of the rowing at the Olympic Games for Channel 7 and of the cycling at the Paralympics for Channel 7, along with the football second time round. He probably wasn't ready, and he'd be the first to admit that in 2015. I've got him doing a class with me on sports commentary at Swinburne remotely on Thursday, so I'll certainly ask him that question. But he's proven that you can do other sports other than horse racing. But I would love to have learnt how to call some horse racing as well. But at the end of the day, I would love to have had a longer career in mainstream media too, but and just being able to get on with people better in this industry. I think we've all taken the attitude, take no prisoners. You shouldn't take that attitude. And the other thing I'd like to say too, Joanne, is be comfortable in your environment, be comfortable in your own skin. Don't be trying to climb the mountains all the time. Just know that you've done the best you can. The opportunities mightn't come your way all the time, but if you're still doing what you're doing, you're still calling football matches, soccer matches, it mightn't be the number one game like the grand final or the test match. Just be comfortable in that environment. And also make sure you get on better with people. And that's, there's a few things there, but I mean, as most people would know, you learn a hell of a lot as you go along. Things that I've learned since I've left the ABC and got out of mainstream media, I'd love to have put that in place when I was still in mainstream media 5, 6, 7 years ago. Hope that wasn't a too long-winded answer for you.
All right. So on mental health, have you seen much about Simone Biles' gymnastics?
Oh, I've read a little bit about that. It's a sad story too. There's lots of pressure on her. Look, I don't know what's going on with Simone in regard to her mental health, except that obviously it got a bit too much for her. But she did still perform in some events. I hope she's okay. At the end of the day, there should have been more support for her around that. Maybe, again, she was embarrassed to mention too much about it. A lot of athletes mention it later, and then the media, and I think many of them are wrong with their attitude, especially in a sport like AFL football. And I keep going back to that because we see so much of it here in Melbourne. There's so much coverage of it that they'll start talking about, oh, I don't understand it. Okay, if you don't understand it, don't talk about it. Don't make an opinion. I know you have to make an opinion on most things. Don't put your opinion forward on what that person's going through unless you know more about it. And I've always thought that there should be mental health practitioners speaking to people before an AFL season who are going to be working in the AFL media. And as I said, there are around 1,600, probably more now, since I left, who are covering the AFL in whatever media outlet it is, social media, electronic, print, etc. And they should all have a bit of an idea about all the different sorts of mental health. One of the big ones that's come in recent times has been homesickness. It's affected a lot of sports people, especially footballers who are finding it hard, and they want to come home when their contract ends or even in the middle of their contract. And you see it now even with players going home last year when they were stuck in the bubbles in the AFL and the NRL. This year it was a little bit different. They just decided we're going to go ahead here, we'll take a big hit, and we'll play matches with our crowds, and people would be in their own beds. And now they're out on the road. We've got the end product coming up in the AFL and also the NRL, so they're going to get through it. But homesickness has become a big issue in mental health. But, yeah, look, Simone Biles, I hope that she can come back. She's got 3 years to work on getting her health right again. The difference with her and someone like Naomi Osaka is gymnastics, certainly in this country. Again, I probably can't speak over in America, but she was seen as one of the big stars of this American Olympics team, isn't as big a sport profile-wise as tennis is. So she can have 3 years if she wants to. That's if she wants to continue on in the sport. She's already achieved so much to get herself as right as she possibly can be to be able to cope with the expectation and pressure that is likely to be on her again if her performances continue to be as good as they were in 2016 and the lead up to these Olympic Games. And I wish her all the best.
Okay, I think this is the very last question. Is there a sport, in your opinion, that is not as popular as it should be?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. It depends how it's covered. Look, there are some. Look, I think until recently, basketball was one of those because it was such a big sport in this country. That, in the fact that it was played everywhere. I mean, there were basketball courts that were full. People just love their recreational basketball because it's so big in America. They love the NBA. I think thanks to Larry Kesselman, who's done a great job in taking over the NBL, the sport's become a lot more popular. We've now seen Australia win their first men's Olympic Games medal. They won bronze. It was a terrific performance. But I think up until recently, it's not as popular as it could have been, considering it is a world sport. And we've got some wonderful players here. I think another thing with basketball was it was losing out to football with the recruiting. The recruiters were seeing there was some promise amongst some very big athletes that if they got them to football, they could become good footballers. And they felt that there might have been a bit more money in football in Australia than there would be in basketball in Australia. And they managed to prize them out of that sport. So that certainly is one sport that should be more popular. I think hockey's another one that should be more popular. I think it's a great sport. It's played right around the world. We've got pretty good teams. Probably not as successful at Olympic Games, especially with the men that they should be. But then again, I suppose being an Olympic sport, they only become popular every 4 years. But look, that's a very, very good question.
Okay. I think there were a couple more, but we'll end it there. So thank you, Cooper, for your super chat. That was really great of you. Thank you for the time tonight, Joe. Much appreciated. Thanks for answering all the questions, Dan. So thank you very much. So thank you for coming on, Dan. So to everyone that's watching on replay, if you've enjoyed this and you'd like to see more, let me know. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Oh, by the way, Dan, I know Harrison's going to be watching the replay. Everybody on the channel knows Harrison. So if you want to give a shout out to Harrison, so he'll be happy. And then everybody knows Harrison because Harrison is our joke teller on the channel. Yes, so thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Yes, it was a good, relaxed one to come back to after having a couple of nights. So make sure you hit like, subscribe, and I'll catch you all again tomorrow.
Thanks so much for having me, Joanne, and thanks, everyone, and thanks for your nice words, Poppy. I really enjoyed that, guys, and maybe, again, I'd love to come on. I'm liking looking down the column here, rock climbing. Not sure it's an Olympic sport, and I believe, guys, they're bringing in breakdancing in Paris. Now, greatest respect to the breakdancers out there. It would take a lot of time and effort to get that right. But again, it's more a pastime than a sport for me. But would love to chat again. Thanks very much, everyone.
All right. See ya. Thank you.
All the best.